tardes, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, time, and love and support everybody sends my way. From the heart, I highly appreciate every one of you. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype the video to help the message get out there a little bit further. Gracias. Well, getting right into the topic on him. On this one, I want to touch on what my belief is that, you know, Emmett was still in the beginning phase of infiltrating neighborhood. And one asked me to touch on La Luz Verde on neighborhoods or the green light on neighborhoods, right? And how I seen it from inside. And this was one of the cases, right? Because more so, you guys know I'm from Northern California, and the green light mainly stays in county, right? Unless you could say you're that one person that got it put on your neighborhood for some reason, you're in the system, it's going to carry on and follow you. But, anyways, allow me to make sense. This one's going to circle around Chico from Hazzard and the barrio Violent Voids as a whole, right? And I want to take you back to 1999 when, way before I was on my way to Ironwood, right? I had well, they had already told me I was going to be sent to a southern institution because I was considered a threat to northern Hispanics. All that little drama that committee puts on your jacket to send you wherever they want, basically, right? And I was going to be going to Ironwood, right? And things started playing behind the scenes, right, with Raul and Terco. You know, again, I was Raul really extended his hand in the form that he wanted to help me do what I wanted at that time, right? Which is get my name up there with the individuals that at the time is what counted to me, right? So, anyways, right when I got there, we started spinning the wheel to get things happening. I have put it out there before, but one of the things that happens when you get a jardín, right, or a yard for a pili, is there's listas. You know, maybe we'll later touch on them all, but on this one, I want to touch on basically it's real rare, right, that a green light is going to follow a neighborhood into the into prison. For example, you guys know when it comes to Lowell, Opal, uh, they can't walk amongst us. Period. Point blank. Maravilla, though, it's a whole different thing. I guess they were going through their thing in a county jail, but in the system, they were amongst us, right? They always walk GP no matter what. And it was never an issue. They always rock with us. They, with the exception of a few that try to bring chaos, but I believe that's on every round flood, right? Or an individual got there that again had something coming, right? According to the Pilis, and he was on that lista, and you took care of business, and most of the time, Maravilla as a whole would jump in to defend their homeboy, you know? And, well, in some cases, I agree with them, as their neighborhood is being attacked. And, for the history of LA County, is like they're holding it 10 toes down doing GP. That's the point. As well as the homies from Van Nuys, right? As I stated in backstories, there was a few camaradas from Van Nuys. Uh, like I mentioned before, Pirate, Nino, Raton, Moreno. Well, there was 5, 6 homies, right? To make this not a long story, from Venice, and I got pretty good with Raton mostly, right, and Pirate because they were in 3 block with me. So me being curious on why there was 3 individuals from their neighborhood that it just it stated when I got told this, right, these individuals were some of the main dudes to the cause of their green light. For those that don't know, Van Nuys had a green light for a few years, right? And it stemmed from them starting off. When a neighborhood starts off, it's they want to make their name known. Period. Point blank. That's everywhere. So they go out their way to do things, right? And I understand that the time they got the green light, it was a time where Emma was inputting power on the neighborhoods, or trying to at least. With the no drive-by shootings, and the homies from Van Nuys, they were known to do so. Now, no disrespect to the homies, I agree with it. To the fullest. I have a real strong belief there's no need to shoot up a house where there could be kids, or a car where Jefita could be in the car, or you know, there's just no sense of that, right? To me, well, personally, it feels better when you're able to walk up and see someone in the eyes and it's your enemiga, right? So you take care of business, and knowing you took care of business, good, right? But anyways, to each their own, right? My respects. And basically, I was curious about an individual, right? That Chico was the one hunting for him. He had basically got in at Terco, telling him he knew this cat didn't have a pass, and there was no cleaning up, I guess, the green light till homeboy got turned in. There was no payoff. He needed to get whacked point blank, right? Now, due excuse, I don't know the full history on how it happened. I'm guessing Van Nuys, they backed their homeboy up, right? And but M is smart, right? They started utilizing again the drive-bys, the shooting houses, cars that I guess Van Nuys was known for, more so on pacas, right? Because well, it's what game banging has become, right? And your enemies go do something to you, and instead of you bucking up, taking care of business, right, and run it back, most individuals will go whine and cry to Billy's to have them take care of it for you, which in my eyes is wrong too, right? But anyways, I guess that this cat, Combat, had hit up an individual, right, a conecta, someone slanging in their neighborhood, and without knowing, again, I believe it goes back from being a new neighborhood, right? You're trying just to make yourself known out there, and homeboy decided to clip him, not like take him out or nothing, but take everything individual was selling, right? Without knowing that Emma again was infiltrating on the streets, and felt they had that power to just put workers in neighborhoods point blank, and they didn't need to show the neighborhood respect to at least let them know, hey, so and so's under me, or something to that effect, right? Um, and it turned out to be Chico's worker. He was the one selling Chico's dope, For those that are familiar with Chico, he had a big reach when it came to candy, right? He could he could tap in, which I would later touch on that, right? I've been tiptoeing around this individual because, well, I'll get to that on the end. And I guess what didn't help Convict was, later on he shut up a house, right? That his enemiga from Pacoima was supposed to be in there, but I guess the family was in the living room, and it went bad with the little kid, right? Which I agree that should follow you everywhere, to have your juggler taken out. No buts, no ifs, and again, I apologize to Vineland boys, but it is what it is, right? That ain't game banging in my books. But anyways, getting back to Ironwood, right? Raton, Nino, and Pirate, again, they were in my block, right? And Pirate was a cool individual. You see, he had been down way before the light. I'll be lying to tell you exactly how long, but I know he was doing his time, and he was a cool homie, right? In the sense that he programmed whenever something was requested as a whole, he stepped up to the plate. He didn't really have a lot of people taking care of him. You know, so whenever Candy came into it, he would ask me for a favor. In the sense, be like, hey, homie, find me a couple of, either cuartitos or grams, right? Let me move him around just to make some feria for canteen or things like that, right? So again, he used to feed him his homie, right? I liked the dude, so I told him, Simon, ahí te va. I knew he didn't get high. He just wanted to put some food in his locker, right, and cosmetics, which there's always a way for a camarada to make a little hustle, on the side in there. Well, at least as a camarada, you should be able to help, right? And anyways, as a little bit went by, and first off, I was surprised that Chico got at me directly, right, with a request. And again, I was under terco, right? So my first instinct was, again, I was blessed with Raul there. I was able to run things through him to have him tell me what was the proper action. Remember, I was still wet behind the ears, right, on a lot of things. So Raul told me basically to get at Terco, and if Terco okayed it, then I had to get it done. And what he was asking me was to give a time limitation to Pirate, to basically give us the whereabouts of Convict. You see, I guess he was a family member of Pirate to some extent, right? So they felt, or Chico felt, he knew exactly where he was at, you know. And again, I told Terco, I told Chico that, of course, right, I would get that out there the way he was requesting. It went back to not having a backbone, right? Or more so, loving the movement to the point that, dispuesto. You don't ask them questions you should ask. But anyways, I got a terco, and I told him what Chico had requested of me. And at first, Terco was like, hey, hold up. I'll get back to you on this. Because Terco was that individual that at the time it was war between them, right? To maintain yards. So he felt Chico was stepping on his toes by going over him and directing the message to me by one of his homeboys right on the yard. And But to my surprise later on, yeah, it was give the homie a month. He don't produce, whack him. So I tried to speak up for the homie and told him, man, I'm a witness that he's not in touch with nobody in his family. He's doing bad to the point that, I told him basically, that whenever Dulce came into play, I would have homie put some food because he never had food, never had packages, was never on the phone, things like that. And he said that don't matter. It goes above. He could find out where homeboy's at, because well, I guess it got to the point where they wanted the neighborhood to pay off, right? But Chico wasn't allowing it unless homeboy was turned in, killed, whatever. And I went up to pirate, And again, I ain't glorifying nor proud of this. Like I stated before, I was part of the problem, right? As mostly everyone that held a position, right? We obey blindly. And I hit up pirate and I told him, man, this is what they're requesting. I guess homeboy is part of your family to some extent. I don't know. Whoever told him, it had to come from somebody close to you to know your family's history when you've been down so long. But anyways, they want you to call and hunt around. Of course, me being a snake, I wasn't going to tell him or you're going to get whacked and removed because I didn't want him to push on, right? To go from the yard because again, it would be a bad look on myself to have an individual with that needed to get hit or complete a mission and not do it and just walk off, and which in my belief it wouldn't been the case with Pirate, right? He had a good head on his shoulders, he had a good heart, but regardless, you have to foresee these things because caras vemos, corazones no sabemos, right? Because we can see someone's face, but we don't know what's really in their heart, right? Anyways, to not make this too long, Pirate wasn't able to. So, out of respect, I went with the homie from Hazzard and I shot him appeal to Chico, asked to Terco, and I told him, hey, the time limitation hit. Homie's been trying, but he can't find him. And I told Terco, I also shot Chico and I'm appeal and I let him know out of respect. And Terco basically told me, wait on Chico's answer and whatever he tells you, you do as he says. Just make sure you keep me in the loop. And you guys know, Chico was hurt, right? That a Sureño dared to take from him when it was the beginning of they were above all right, as a car, as a causa. And, eventually it will come down to Chico, okay, since he's not useful, there's no need to have him around if he's not going to support us. And if he's covering up, which we don't know, it's better not to walk amongst them. So go ahead and have him removed. Make sure you state your point to the rest of the vatos from Venice, which in my belief is it shouldn't have been the case, right? Because I understand how the green light works, but there's always crowds in a neighborhood. Don't matter what neighborhood. There's the party dudes. There's the hyena dudes, right? That always chasing hyenas, and there's the game bangers, right? That are always representing their hood, and there's the knuckleheads that just do things, but to actually chase you to prison, it's different sour no, right? But anyways, you know, again, I'm glorifying all this, but nor am I trying to say what I did was right. So please don't take it as that. But I did. I ended up having a homeboy hit, right? And like Chico said, make sure you have homies from Hazzard do it. As I would get at them, and that was behind between them. I had Pyro remove, hit, whack. This is Chico has requested, and it was one of them things that later on where I had the months to sit down and really analyze. You could say my whole career, right? That I'm sharing with you guys. It was one of them things that isn't right. How you go from having someone do something and ricocheting to you. Anyways, I guess shortly after this, they ended up clipping Convict, right? Finding him, clipping him, and it was part of why the green light was able to come off of Venice. It's a tricky thing, right? When it comes to green light, specifically talking about Venice. There was I think Nino and another homie were from Diablos, and they were catching the blues as Violent Voice, and it's as I heard, there's whole two different neighborhoods, but that didn't matter. The cries weren't heard, I guess, because I can imagine the agony they went through in LA County, right? As all the homies that went through it to the point where Judas had to give them their own macho. And at the same time, you're paying the piper for someone that you're not even from the same neighborhood. But again, you got higher ups that don't even want to hear it. You're going to buck up or walk off. And to a lot of camaradas, that walk off part just isn't in the cards. But again, Pirate, he would end up getting hit and would eventually going off to the other side. You know, I hope he's doing well today, right? He was a good individual, and I bet it's part of the agonies I tell people you have to walk through in prison if you set yourself there. But again, I hope I was able to put a message on here. I guess what I'm inputting is what has become, right? That is, family members are going to be affected from you going to prison now, point blank. I could sit here and pinpoint the main things people talk, right? You can't even have visits now because your family's going to be targeted. You know, I understand cities like in LA, Orange County, Riverside, or IE, and XX, 805 area, Bakers. It's a family thing. It goes from abuelitos to jefitos to you, kids, whatever. And, but, even those familia, and I would ride with familia, right? At least I believe so at that time. But I didn't see right, that just because you're familia, you get put in a spot that sometimes it's just impossible. But I guess it's those spots I just mentioned, right? That Emmett feels entitled to. And again, you had individuals like me that didn't have that backbone, right, to actually shield a camarada that was good and allowed an individual that, in reality, when I hit Pelican Bays, he should have been no good. He was on that lista, nasty too, right? For those that don't know, there's no doubt this individual did what he did. But then again, you can't tell him, Hey, you see a campolero or a camarada comes to the yard sureño with them chargers. There's no need to even, just send it up and take care of it, right? But when it comes to them, even if you know they have them nasty charges, and it tells you he sends off, you see, for all those hard believers, I walked around yards that there was individuals with them nasty charges, them unforgivable charges, but they were paying the M, and the M would tell you touch him and that's your career. So what has it really become, right? And this is a question to everybody. Please give me your opinion on the comments. But in this case, I thought it wasn't right. But again, I didn't have no backbone, right, to back the camarada up. And I think that's what you're seeing nowadays. It's just you can't question these individuals even when you know things ain't right. But anyways, this is for the one viewer that told me to touch on my run-ins. I could only speak about my personal run-ins with people with green lights. Well, I would do a reaction on the other channel on all of them, right? I just thought I would share this with you. Again, the message is don't give up your life on the street to go in and get yourself in a hurricane of lies misled. There's a lot of good camaradas inside, but again, there is those that don't allow that to continue, believe me, for obvious reasons. Before I go, I wanted to please apologize to everyone, that I've been a little in my head. That's why I've been showing you guys the pictures that I've been trying to get this testing done. As I mentioned before, even though I got chemo Monday, I'm trying to finish everything because they're talking about the head surgery. I bugged down and asked my higher power, which in my case is Jesus, right? What is really happening, right? Because the chemo's knocking me down, and this testing is for to get my head surgery done in like ASAP, right? Because like I mentioned to everyone, is I shouldn't have been this long without it, point blank. Because so now I'm trying to do the hospital thing and a lawyer. Because I will share with you guys on tonight's live what they're telling me, and you know, it's part of setting things. Because there's certain things that I don't want, but I will share with them later. But that's why I share the pictures and not to anything else, but to let you know, that I'm not laying down and not keeping my word. I'm actually out trying to deal with everything, as everyone knows. And Culiacan, right? There's different tippy toes, I guess. But anyways, with this, stay loyal to those you need to stay loyal. Most importantly to yourself. Always stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones. Hope everybody continues to have a great day.